Well, welcome to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
I am your co-host, Pastor Wayne Moore.
Always a pleasure to host with you.
Man, it's always good to be in your presence, man.
And if people are watching this in the month of September, happy birthday.
Well, thank
It's
you
his birthday.
so much. Yeah.
It's his birthday this month.
Thank you so much. I'm just happy to still be alive.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful to the Lord that I'm still around and I'm still doing things in the community. And most of all, I'm happy to be here with you.
Thank you. And almost half that time you've been in public service to some degree, pastoring people.
Pastoring people, working with people.
And working in the community,
a lot of good friends and a lot of good enemies. And so there's no bad enemies.
Yeah.
So I'm just grateful to be a part of public service and pastoring and working in the community and make things happen for other people.
And we're grateful to have you, and we're grateful to have you all here too.
My God, yes.
It's going to be a great show today. We want to thank our sponsors.
Yes, Lee Crossack and Crawley are with us here again today, and then Fervent Care Christian Academy. We also have Indianapolis Health Start Safe Sleep Program has been with us, is doing a phenomenal job. Matter of fact, this is Infant Mortality Month.
Yeah.
And we want people to understand that there's going to be some things going on around the city that these young ladies and young men need to attend.
And all the information that we share with you, you can get that information on YouTube. Please go to WHMB TV 40's YouTube site and subscribe.
First show, the very first
one's there.
It's still there.
Yeah.
The very first one is there, which was Virginia Kane.
Yeah.
It's there. And like us where?
On Facebook. Please be sure you do that. So we've got Representative Robin Shackelford.
Yes, and she's looking like a star today.
She's outstanding in every way.
And she's doing some stardom service in our community, and we're going to see what she's talking about. She's very especially proud of the Indiana Black Legislators Caucus Town Hall meetings.
And she's the chair.
And she's the chair,
yeah.
And she's looking a little Afrocentric today, too, and so that's going to be something for the community, 1.5 million people to look at. When they see this representative who's representing us in District 98, I believe it is.
Yep, she'll be joining us here very shortly, so stay tuned, and we'll be back after this. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. We're joined by State Representative for the state of Indiana, State Representative Robin Shackelford.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming today.
No problem.
District 98.
Tell us how the district's doing.
So the district is actually doing well. We have challenges, but surpassing all the challenges, we actually got some things going on in Martindale Brightwood. So our MB7 initiative that has like 7 items and goals and challenges that we're working on with the MOVE group. And then for the Far East side, a lot is going on out there when you talk about Pathway Resource Services, CAFE. So I think what I'm seeing in my district is now more regular people, more community people are starting to get involved in helping out with the community and advocating on behalf of the community.
That's because you're out there.
Yeah, and that's when it really works, right?
Yes.
The people get involved.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for making yourself available whenever I have had an idea about legislation.
Yes.
You've always listened and followed through. And tell us and our audience how important that is, because a lot of times people complain about things or want to see change, but I don't think, and I hope I'm not precipitous to say, you and your colleagues don't often get the phone calls.
Exactly. And so what we tried to advocate this past time in the town hall meetings is just teaching people how to advocate. People don't realize that we do answer our own phones. We answer our own emails. So I had a class come in and we talked about different things that they wanted to see in the school and different policies. So I said, you can contact me right here and now because the emails that you send to that H98 account come directly to my cell phone. And I see them instantaneously. And then I usually try to respond, if not me or my staff, within 48 to 24 hours. But if there's some idea that you want put into legislation, we are more than happy to hear those ideas.
Yeah.
Tell us what's going on now as it relates to studies.
So now we're in what's called interim summer studies time. They run from about July to October. And this session, we actually, I would say it's kind of monumental because usually each group meets about 3 times, but we have about 3 groups that are going to meet 5 times discussing healthcare costs, prescription drug costs, and then what are those drivers driving up Medicaid. So in all those study committees, we'll be talking about issues that really are challenges to our community, especially when we're talking about hospital stays, how much it costs to be in a hospital, when you're talking about insulin that a lot of our minorities are on and have diabetes. So we're trying to drill down and see where are these costs coming from and how can we build legislation to help reduce these costs.
I watched you deal with the license issue.
Yes.
You did a lot of great work on that. A lot of young men and young women are being reinstated as regular drivers with their license again. You need to be commended for that. And
Thank you.
those are the kind of issues, I believe, Jackson, that we are concerned about. Issues that hit the top of the spectrum as well as the grassroots level,
Yes.
to where all people can have access to legislation that has tendency to work for everybody. Would you agree with that?
I agree, and that one was an issue that affected, like you said, everyone from the top to the bottom. Once we got into it and started studying it, then I saw that we had over 500,000 Hoosiers that actually are in the state of having their license suspended.
Wow.
So it became not only an issue for my district and the people that I work with, but also the whole state of Indiana. And when it happens like that, it's easier for us to get legislation passed because then people see how it affects their community. And the legislation of traffic amnesty will actually start in January,
Right.
and you get 50% off what you owe to the BMV and 50% off of what you owe to the courts.
That's phenomenal. I mean, that's
Yes.
a savings to someone who's trying to get their driving record reestablished, but the state loses a lot of money. You know, I don't mean loses a lot of money, but they're not going to be able to make BMV and all those other entities are not going to be able to do a lot of
Yeah.
income like they used to in this particular situation, which is great. I mean, we're helping the consumer.
Yes, and what we found out was the state really wasn't collecting much of those fees and payments because people just couldn't afford it.
Right.
On average, people owed about $5,000 to $6,000. So they were just driving with a suspended license.
As the term would be, driving dirty.
Driving dirty. Yes.
It's a southern term.
Southern
Yeah.
term would be.
Our urban term. Yeah, so they were continuing to drive to work, to doctor's appointments, to schools on a suspended license because they just can't afford to pay down those fees and fines. So that's what we realized. This will actually be a bonus to the state if we start getting some of that income to come in.
Okay, I guess I missed it.
Yeah.
You're
So,
gonna-
Representative, talk about your new post. Not real new, but it is new. Representative Cherish Pryor had the post of being chair of the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus. Congratulations! You are
Thank
now,
you.
as we understand it, you're the chair.
Yes.
And our viewing audience may not know what that is and what your responsibility is.
and how it works.
So I became chair in November before we start session, and then Cherish Pryor moved up to one of our leadership positions in the House caucus. So she wanted to do that, so now she's our floor leader. For the Black Caucus, we have 12 members, which I help try to motivate. These are 12 leaders, 12 elected officials, 12 representatives, 12 senators. Some people have asked, can they join the caucus? Only if you're a legislator, if you get to be in this caucus. We represent a voting bloc where we try to stick together on issues. And this year we did a couple of things different. We really worked bipartisan with the other side. So we put together an agenda at the beginning of session, and we met with all 4 leaders. Instead of just meeting with our Democrat leaders, we met with all 4 leaders to see how could they help us with this African American agenda and push this agenda. And then we also take on a responsibility of educating the public on advocacy, educating them on what's coming up in the State House, making sure that we're pushing legislation that represents the African American community.
Outstanding. And we're just about ready to go to break, but when it comes to the African American agenda, AKA Black Agenda, how are you guys working with the community to try and make sure that we're all on the same page?
So what I had them do this time is let them pick like their biggest bill that they felt affected their community or affected the state. and they got to select that, and we made up the agenda that way. So we ended up having 13 bills that we thought were effective and represented our community become our agenda. And then out of that, we voted on 4 top issues. And those issues were hate crimes, teachers' pay increases, traffic amnesty, and then looking at homicides as a health issue. So we're trying to work with the community to make sure they know what we're trying to push in the legislature and what's our agenda, and hopefully making sure that it matches with what the community is looking for.
All right, we'll put a pin right there. We got to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back after these messages. Welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. We're joined by State Representative for Indiana, Representative Robin Shackelford.
District 98.
District 98. And before we get on to some other things, you're a native of Indiana, particularly Indianapolis. Born and raised?
Born and raised, was born in the Martindale-Brightwood area,
Wow.
off of 25th and LaSalle, until we moved to 36 in Delaware.
Okay,
Yes.
that's outstanding. Dr. Moore, off air, we were talking about how some of the things the legislature is moving through the community. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Since you are the caucus president, and I hope I'm saying that right, tell us how the town hall meetings work in certain parts of the state. Tell us what you do with that.
So we visited 8 cities, and the 8 cities that we visited were those cities that were prone to have African American populations. So it was Indianapolis, Hammond, Indiana, Fort Wayne, South Bend, Evansville, Jeffersonville, and Terre Haute. And we try to go to those cities that don't have African American representatives or legislators, because right now our 12 legislators are only in Marion County and Lake County. So for some of those populations, say like Jeffersonville and Evansville, they're excited to see us come. They're excited to learn about what happened in the past session. We put together a booklet of legislation that we think was important to them that passed and didn't pass. And then we also did a training session on advocacy and then on the upcoming census. So people would know why the census were important and how they can participate or how they can get employed by the U.S. Department of Census.
So you do get ideas about legislation.
Yes.
What's the latest one you saw or heard?
So the latest one I saw is people wanting to see more on how can we reduce police homicides? How can we do more racial profiling? And actually
Less racial profiling?
Yes, less. Sorry about that. So Representative Pryor had a bill on that. I also had a bill before. But this is where we say that advocacy come in, because even though we may introduce the bills, we need the power of the people to come behind it and bring that extra push to get these legislative pieces actually heard.
Now, is that the phone calls or is that people showing up when these bills are heard, or both?
They can do both. So they can email, which you go on our website, you can email from there, or you can email the legislator directly. You can call into our phone bank at our 800 number, or you can show in person and testify. So we like all of them, and we keep track of all of them.
I've learned that in person, which you and I've done before, is pretty effective for the legislators to hear from the community. And I think there's some things we're probably going to address this year. What are some of the things that you're hearing that are going to be on the legislative docket?
So I know some of the things that are on my docket that my community has listed. What I do is take my phone and just keep a list of running lists as I'm out in the community. Some of the things people want is giving renters more power to be able to go against these deadbeat landlords. So you'll see some legislation where renters are able to withhold their rent if they're not living in housable areas and housable housing. That happened a lot on the east side this year. More things on hate crimes. We didn't get everything included in this legislation, like age, gender, and sexual orientation. So you'll see that coming back up again, especially the NAACP is a big advocate for the hate crimes legislation. And then healthcare in general, you'll see different pieces coming up out of our study committees on what can we do about the prescription drug costs and also healthcare, the crisis on the prices of healthcare. So legislation on those.
Looks like it's a busy year.
Yes, It'll be a busy year, even though it's considered a short session. There's still a lot of work to be done.
You guys are doing good work. And when it comes to legislation, I think there needs to be clarity with our viewing audience, because a lot of times with regard to what affects Black people, people believe that our legislators can just move it through very quickly. And I'll never forget, I was in a breakfast event, and Speaker of the House, Brian Bosma, he was saying that if the legislation doesn't affect all Hoosiers, then he wouldn't be moved one way or another. And the ethnic group that was there, they were a little taken aback. And I've been thinking about that ever since he said it. It's been about a couple of years ago. So when we start talking about getting things done, is there a strategy that we need to be thinking about, the clergy, the faith community, people in general, to help understand this is how we got to do it if we're going to get it to go?
Yes, and he's absolutely right. You got 150 legislators that you need to get on your side, plus the governor's office. These legislators come from rural Indiana, urban Indiana, different backgrounds, and if they don't feel, if you don't get to their heart or to their minds and it affects their community, then it's harder to get something passed that just affect our community. So if you think of things more in a broader kind of sense, like the traffic amnesty that affected almost 500,000, or like healthcare costs now, prescription drug costs. A lot of our population is getting older, so the cost is going to increase. So we're trying to do something preventatively now to help those healthcare costs, whether it's opioids, getting more help for minorities dealing with opioids, since now that's growing in the minority population. We already know minority opioids is a big issue on the Caucasian side, and we're trying to get more federal funding. So if we want to see some of that funding come to the African American community, that would be one of those issues we can help advocate for, because you want to look at it in a broader sense.
You know, I hear all the time when I go in certain places about the massive surplus we have.
Yes.
The rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Rainy day surplus, the money.
Yes.
1.3 or 4 billion.
Billion.
We have that type of surplus. Do you have any ideas where you would like to see, if you had the opportunity, see where some of that surplus money could go?
So the
Or rainy, I would like, he calls it rainy day.
Well, that's what they call it.
Yeah, well, they call it rainy day so you won't,
Yeah, surplus.
so you won't touch it. But it's really a surplus.
It's raining too.
And it's raining.
So that surplus has been built on the back of these services that our community has not gotten for years.
Have cut
And-
services.
Yes, cut services, cut funding to the state agencies. So a lot of those state agencies are suffering, and they're having to cut back people, they're having to cut back services. So if we can see some of that funding go into, one, teacher salaries, which was on our agenda, because they
Will that
didn't
come
wanna-
back?
Huh?
Will that come back?
Yes, that'll come
teacher
back.
salary.
Yeah, so we can see it go into teacher salaries, where the teachers actually see the funding come into their paychecks, not just a shift in money from one or another. If we can see that money go into healthy food finance, because we know that access to food is one of our biggest causes of why we're not meeting some of these health guidelines. So if we can get that legislation passed, which has funding involved in it. There's a lot of legislation involved that affects our community that has funding involved in it, whether it's body cameras and setting up a grant program at the state level, like the federal level, for some money to go into that, because right now the cities want them, but they don't have the funding. So if we can assist with that funding to help out and get them in these local law enforcement agencies 100% instead of just partial.
So you're an advocate of using rainy day money or surplus money?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially when it's raining.
It's when it's
Yes.
raining.
Yeah.
Though the sun is shining, it is raining.
Yeah, I'm budget conscious, but there are services that have been basically depleted or haven't been taken care of because we've been so concerned about trying to keep that money.
Well, you've been a great guest.
Great, phenomenal guest.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All the
Phenomenal.
best to you and the legislature.
Thank you.
Will you
Thanks
come
for your
back?
service.
Yes, I'll definitely come back.
Would you love to come back?
I would love to come back. If you guys invite me, I'll come back.
Well, if you would say hello to your constituency
Yeah, all of you, yeah.
in that camera there.
Hello, Martindale, Brightwood, Far East Side, District 98. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. And we want to also say thank you for watching. We'll be back in just a few moments with the rundown. Stay with us. Well, welcome back to Real People, Real Voices. I'm your host, James Jackson.
Co-host Dr. Wayne Moore.
I'm your executive producer, Faith McKinney.
I want to thank our sponsors.
You two, give them a run.
Lee Castle and Crowley. If you need help, they can help you. Also, the Fervent Care Child Care at Christian Academy. Christian, clean, caring, and convenient. Give them a call. And Marion County Public Health Department, they're sponsoring also, and we really appreciate them. And we hope that you will use their services.
Yeah, and remember, it's Infant Mortality Month. Get some information about it.
Yeah. So, Representative Shackelford shared a lot of great information with us. And I think there's a lot that they can do to help improve the quality of life for everybody that lives in Indiana, and particularly in the city of Indianapolis.
Yeah, but did you hear about the starvation of programs, though? Because of the, what you call rainy day or one
Diverting that money.
Yeah, using some of that money. She's an advocate of using some rainy day money to strengthen organizations that have been weakened due to budget cuts, which created the budget, which created the rainy day fund, which is amazing. And but to get everybody to buy into it, that is that's where the job is.
I wonder where the interest from that money goes. You know?
No, but there is interest now.
It has to be on a 1.2 some odd billion dollars.
Yeah, 1.2, 1.3. Yeah, it's some interest. Yeah, they don't tell you where it goes.
Yeah, we probably got
They might be turning right back over, you know. I don't know what they do.
We'll have to
Well-
check that paper for our names. For
Well,
the
you know,
interest.
Indianapolis had
Yeah.
a similar fund, or has a similar fund. And some of that interest was used, I think, a couple of years ago
Yeah, to do some things.
to do some things with.
Yeah, but she's doing a great job with what she's working with. She has the caucus and moving around the state, trying to create information and create Afro-American candidates, which is great.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to know that it's not enough just to complain.
Right, you
We
got to do
have
something.
to make sure that we're working with our legislators to get things done.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, our role in this whole thing, we're not just complaining, we're doing something about it. We're letting our audience know about what's going on, and we bring in the people that can inform them about what's going on.
What's happening?
What's
Yeah.
happening.
What's going on?
Yeah. So if you didn't know,
Now you know.
now you know. We'll see you next time.